Hello, this is part 2 of High School Friends by Marie Cole from the Justfriends series. If you missed part 1, click on my name down below and go find part 1 so you don't miss it. I hope you enjoy.
Chapter 10. Kent. It had been 3 weeks since I'd asked Jen to be my girlfriend. I wasn't even quite sure why she even acted as she did towards me. She was gorgeous. I was a kid getting paper balls thrown at his head in class. And something had happened after she started hanging around me. The paper balls stopped coming. The snide comments only happened when she wasn't near me. Aside from that, she was funny and smart and lots of fun to be around. So Daddy said we could take the Jag out this weekend. Where do you want to go? Jen always smelled so good, and today was no exception, as she held onto my arm as we walked down the hallway together, people actually moving out of the way for us to get through. The scary part was that I was starting to get used to it. I blinked as I processed the words she'd said. I guess I was in my own la-la land. I'm not sure. Where do you want to go? Well, she waved as a group of her fellow cheerleaders passed us and then resumed. I was thinking we could sneak some of Daddy's finest whiskey and find a little place to enjoy it. Alone. She emphasized the last word, and I realized she meant that she didn't want Elly coming along. She never did. I frowned. Why didn't Jen like Elly that much? I just couldn't grasp that. For that matter, I hadn't hung out with Elly alone in a while now. Well, as if she knew I was on the verge of declining, she upped the ante. Fine. I wanted it to be a surprise, but you know just how to get things out of me. I got us 2 tickets to Comic-Con this weekend. She looked up at me with a huge beaming grin. All I could do was blink. You what? Again, my brain was chugging along like an overweight train up a hill. You got us 2 tickets to Comic-Con. As in the large gathering of nerds who tend to dress up as their favorite heroes and nerd out all weekend? She nodded emphatically, still beaming. Yes, aren't you excited? I stopped there in the hall with her. I always felt self-conscious around her. She was so pretty, and I was, well, not. Before I could control myself, I leaned forward and kissed her. Kissing her wasn't strange or new. We'd been making out in my bedroom and hers for a few weeks. But in public, it was unheard of. I felt her melt against me as our lips fell into their magical, practiced dance. Before I knew it, I had her pressed against a hard surface. I finally realized what I was doing, and I pulled away. I could feel my cheeks blazing as I shifted my eyes towards the floor and adjusted my glasses, which had gone askew. Sorry, Thank you, Jen. She smiled, her own cheeks slightly flushed. Anything for my boyfriend. Her eyes shifted, and she smiled brighter. Elly, hey! Guess where I'm taking Kent this weekend? She waved at someone over my shoulder, and before I turned around, I secretly willed my body to get back to the unaroused state. Elly's voice was clear behind me. She was close. Paris? Shit. Jen grinned and shook her head, ignoring Elly's sarcasm. Comic-Con! Are you going? It would be so great to run into you there. Oh, maybe you could even ride with us? Yeah, no. Sorry, I'm busy this weekend. Jen's face fell, and seeing her disappointed did the trick, and I finally turned around. You always used to say how much you wanted to go to one, Elly. Because I always talked about going to one. Now you don't want to go? She pressed her lips together, her face stuck in a neutral expression. Like I said, I'm busy. I'm sure you'll have lots of fun. She pointed to my chest. You're blocking my locker. Jen pulled me into her and wrapped her arm around my lower back. Sorry. We'll bring you back something, won't we, Kenny? I could feel the muscles in my jaw tightening, a usual reaction upon becoming extremely frustrated. Yeah, we'll find something nice. No, don't bother. I don't need any more stuff. Elly moved to her locker and fiddled with the combination, not even looking at us. I wasn't sure what bug was up her butt, but she had been extremely moody ever since the first day of school. I wanted to blame PMS, but it didn't usually last for weeks at a time. Jen tugged on my arm, and when I looked down, she shrugged her slender shoulders and shook her head. She was right. Elly was being crazy, and it was time to go. Bye, Els. Hope you have a good weekend. As we walked away, I felt Jen's hand on my ass, giving it a little squeeze. I pulled her hand away, blushing, but inside I was cheering. Elly may want to be a bitch to me, but my girlfriend sure as heck wasn't. And that was A-OK by me. Comic-Con was awesome. Jen's parents had sprung for 2 rooms in the hotel where it was being held. We had geeked out all day, and then went back to her hotel room to watch some TV. I sighed contentedly as I lay there with Jen on my chest. Jen put her hand on the front of my jeans and batted her thick, long lashes at me. I froze and stiffened. She's been trying to wear me down, but I couldn't let her. I didn't want to be a girl or anything, but losing my virginity in a hotel room, even one as nice as this, wasn't what I'd had in mind. I'd wanted my first time to be special and memorable. Not to mention I was freaking out about the performance, or the likely shortness of the event itself. I grabbed her hand and brought it to my lips, giving it a kiss. Not yet, Jen. She sighed softly and nodded. All right. Sorry to pressure you. I want you so badly. She tried to pull her hand away, but I held it tight. I want you too. You're thinking about Elly? I frowned at her. Where the hell had that come from? No. Are you? I hadn't actually thought about Elly at all, which partially bothered me as the realization struck me. I watched as her eyes grew wide and then returned to normal. She shrugged her shoulders and put her cheek to my chest. I just wonder sometimes, that's all. Wonder about what? If you have feelings for her the way she has feelings for you. I felt nothing for the statement except confusion. Elly was my best friend, and despite the fact that she was a girl, she certainly didn't harbor any romantic feelings for me. Any time I came within 2 feet of her, she'd tense up and stop breathing. I'd received enough hints in the past 3 years to know that she wasn't into me that way. Jen, even if she did have feelings for me, which she doesn't, I'm with you. So please stop obsessing about Elly. Now let's order some room service. I'm hungry. She studied my face, and I watched as she finally accepted what I'd said. She pressed her lips to mine quickly before rolling over the king-sized bed towards the phone. Do you think they'd slip up and let us order wine? I chuckled and shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. You could try, I guess. When she ordered a chocolate and cheese plate with a bottle of champagne, I grabbed the controllers and brought them back to the bed. I can't believe they didn't say anything. Mommy and Daddy must not have flagged my room. Have you ever had anything to drink before? I shook my head. My drug of choice had always been sugar. No, not really my thing. How do you know if you've never tried it? It's illegal. I can wait a few more years until it's not. She giggled and came over, snatching up the extra controller as the Super Mario Brothers theme song filled the room. Such a good little boy you are. No sex, no drugs, no alcohol. That's why your parents are trusting me with their precious little girl all alone in this hotel. Jen grabbed my controller and chucked it across the room. I looked at her, and my words died in my throat. When had she taken her shirt off? I shifted as my pants became a little tighter. What are you doing? Nothing. I leaned back as she reached for the waist of my jeans. I felt the pressure ease somewhat when the zipper was down. I saw nothing but the back of her head as I leaned back a little more, still apprehensive. Oh, God! I'd never understood why the guys in the pornos thought that a blowjob was so great, until that moment. It was a perfect combination I felt with her lips wrapped around my manhood. The perfect amount of suction, and the way her hand moved with her mouth, and the feeling of her tongue. I wasn't sure if I should hold onto her head or pull her hair or rub her back. Every time I made a move to do something, the exquisite pleasure came back again. When she finished, I was laying on my back on the bed, panting. My head was reeling, and I was pretty sure my heart was bursting with love. That was the best thing that had ever happened to me. And at that moment, I could only wonder when, if ever, it was going to happen again. Jen laid next to me and smiled, her fingers slowly running little circles over my shirt. Did you like that, Kenny? Yes, that was incredible. She kissed my cheek. Good, and then bolted from the bed to the bathroom. I buttoned up and then stared at the bathroom door. I jumped a little as a knock sounded on the door. I hoped my cheeks didn't give my secret away as I rolled off the bed and opened the door. Room service. The guy looked behind me, and I did the same before looking back at him. Do you have someone over 21 here? Yeah, my mom is in the bathroom. I couldn't believe I was lying for her. But after what she'd just done, God. He nodded and held out the ticket. Sign here, please. I couldn't believe it was that easy. I signed after writing in a nice big tip, and then watched as a little cart of stuff was wheeled into the room. After he left, I sat on the bed and stared at the champagne. I wasn't at a party. I was on a romantic weekend getaway with my girlfriend. It wasn't exactly the same thing. Not even close. And I wouldn't have champagne to get drunk. I'd just like to have a sip and prevent Jen from drinking it all. Could she drink it all? As I looked up, Jen came out of the bathroom. She smiled and then cheered when her eyes landed on the cart. You did it! She clapped as she approached the champagne and picked it up. Put your head down. These things are dangerous. I did as she instructed after she pointed the bottle right at me. There was a loud pop and a little scream from her. I lifted my head in time to see her pouring the golden, bubbling liquid into 2 glasses. My mouth watered as she lifted her glass to her lips. Those same luscious lips that had just done wonderful things to my junk. Maybe I could taste it on her. I stood up and went over. I slid my hands around her waist and pulled her towards me, grinding myself against her because it felt good, and she'd left me hard and wanting. Oh, Kenny. She grinned as her free hand came to my back. I want a taste, I muttered, before pressing my lips to her. I licked the champagne remnants from her tongue and then drew back. Are you going to share the champagne? I thought you were a good little boy. That was before my hot, sexy girlfriend corrupted me. I tried to drink some more champagne from her lips, but failed. I will share any and everything with you, Kenny. And she did. That night marked the first time I'd tasted $100 truffles, champagne, and a woman. My favorite was the woman. Chapter 11. Elly. I felt someone standing behind me and nearly screamed when I saw Kent's face. He saw my look of terror and grinned. Damn him and his damn smile. It still made me swoon, despite his shitty behavior since meeting Jen. Like last week when they'd both walked right by me in the hallway, staring past me as if I were invisible. And every day in homeroom when they'd giggle together and her hands would be all over his shoulders. God, how I hated it. Scare ya? His voice quivered with amusement. A little bit. It's a little stalkerish to be standing behind someone like that, you know. He smirked, and his eyes glazed over a little. Jen doesn't seem to mind. The mere mention of her turned my insides to fire. I tried to swallow my anger down before replying to him. I hated how he just blurted stuff out. Didn't he know it was killing me? Hadn't my hints been obvious enough? Yes, well, she's your girlfriend. It's different. He rolled his eyes and moved to the side so he could see me while I finished getting the books I'd need tonight for homework. You never minded me standing that close before. You never stood that close before. I looked over, and he was unusually close to me, even now. I frowned at his smiling face as I shifted to my other foot. What the hell is wrong with you? He shook his head, the smile irritatingly bright. Nothing. There's something you're not telling me. Oh my God. Did he do it over the weekend? Did he lose it over the weekend? I turned my face away in case he could read my thoughts. Yeah. And I won't. I don't kiss and tell. I zipped my book bag violently as the thought of the two of them making out, fondling each other and getting it on, played on repeat in my mind. Good. I don't want to know. I have to go. I turned to go, but his hand, warm and strong, grabbed onto my arm. Else, wait a minute. I looked at him and tried to project hate, disgust. It wasn't that hard. I didn't want to talk to him right now. What? Apparently it hadn't worked. Not well enough, anyway. Are you mad at me or something? He wanted to know what was wrong with me? Fine, I'd tell him. I'd tell him that I hated his new girlfriend and the way she was purposely driving a wedge between us. I'd tell him that it sucked not having my best friend around. I'd tell him that I'd gained 5 pounds in the last 3 weeks because I was binge eating all my hurt feelings. I didn't get the chance to tell him anything because I was cut off by the obnoxious giggling that played in my head when I was trying to go to sleep at night. The stuff of nightmares materialized beside him. Kenny, there you are! Jen wrapped her arm around his waist and hugged him. Oh, hey, Ellie. She briefly spared me a glance before putting her attention back on her boyfriend. I shook my head and turned away after she started nibbling on his neck, and Kent moaned. I was so easily forgotten. Nice play, Jen. Nice play. How was I supposed to compete with her, anyway? She knew I wasn't a threat, which is why she made no effort to hide anything. She didn't need to secretly steal him away from me. She could do it right in front of my face. And what was I going to do about it? Nothing. There was nothing that I could do. I was fat Ellie. Low self-esteem Ellie. Friend material Ellie. Depressed and defeated, I slunk away. No one called out after me. The hole in my chest expanded a little. I muddled my way through the rest of the school day somehow, trying to keep myself focused on classwork instead of my boy troubles. But it was hard. Since Jen had come along, the rides with Kent had ceased. My mother had asked why, but I'd just chalked it up to wanting the extra exercise. I was 3 blocks from school when Kent came running up behind me, his breath coming in short, hot bursts. Ellie, God, you walk fast. He held onto my wrist to keep me from moving, and I stared at him as he bent over and struggled to catch his breath. For a moment, my heart squeezed with hope. Did he break up with Jen? Was he going to apologize for being a dick to me earlier? I felt the corners of my mouth tilt into a smile as I watched him continue to struggle to catch his breath. "What's wrong?" I asked, hopeful. He shook his head when he straightened himself, pushing his glasses back onto his nose. "Nothing. Geez." He let go of my wrist and shook his head. "You walk really fast." I turned my back on him and continued to walk. If nothing was wrong, then that meant everything was the same, and I wasn't going to pretend like I was okay with it. "Elly, where are you going?" "Home. I have a shit ton of homework to do." "Well, let me walk with you." "Hurry the heck up, then. Lots of homework, remember?" Part of me wished he would take my bad attitude to heart and just leave me alone. And the other half was cheering, because in spite of it, he was still coming around to talk to me. He still acted as if he wanted to be friends. Friends. I'd come to loathe that word. It really just meant a person you could treat like dirt, and they would still want to be around you and talk to you. Someone who craves any scrap of attention you're willing to give them. That's what it was like to be friends with Kent, anyway. God, I'm so pathetic. "I was just wondering if you were planning on going to Billy Hagen's party Friday night." Billy Hagen? Mr. Popular? I hadn't been planning on it. But if he was asking, then maybe. "I don't know." "Are you going with Jen?" Oh, how it pained me to even say her name. "No, she's going out of town with her parents." I slowed down. That was a plus. A night with Kent. But not alone, surrounded by lots of people. Why the hell did he want to go to a party? That was not his thing. At least it hadn't used to be when we were hanging out. Years and years, and he'd never, ever wanted to go to a party before. "So, are you one of them now? Ready to get drunk and high with the popular kids?" I avoided looking at him, scared that if I did, he'd see how desperately I did want to go. How desperately I wanted to go anywhere with him. "No, come on, Els, it's not like that. I think it'll be fun. And we should experience it at least once, right? It's like a rite of passage. Every high school movie has a big high school party. Besides, there won't be drinking." I rolled my eyes again and shook my head. "That's the biggest pile of bullcrap I've ever heard. If there won't be any drinking, then what are all the popular kids going to be doing?" He shrugged. "Playing video games. It's hip now. I need my good luck charm by my side." He reached out and tried to take my hand, but when I felt his fingers zap mine, I pulled my hand out of his reach. "Or you could just go without me." "I'll draw the wrong kind of attention, unlike your girlfriend." I refused to say her name again. I pressed my lips together and kept my eyes straight ahead, my arms crossed under my chest. He was wearing me thin, and I knew that if he looked in my eyes, he'd know it. "Please, Elly?" He ran ahead just enough to turn around and walk backwards in front of me. His hands were clasped together and pressed tightly against his chest. "Please, please, please?" Damn him and his puppy dog eyes. "Fine." My heart skipped a beat as I saw a light pole coming up behind him. I grabbed him and pulled him to the side just in time. "Just turn your ass around so you don't run into something." His smug smile taunted me as we continued to walk. "I'll pick you up at 8, then?" 9. I'm not going to be the first one to arrive at the high school party. "Fine. 9 it is, then." "Fine." My mind was already wandering to my closet, mentally shuffling through all my options, trying to think of something that would be flattering yet comfortable. Not too formal, not too informal. Something cool without trying too hard. "You all right, Els?" I blinked as Kent's face came into focus. I'd been staring at him absently. "Yeah, this is your street." I pointed to the sign on the corner we'd stopped on. See you tomorrow. At 9, he finished with a nod. Chapter 12. Kent. The party was in full swing when we entered at 9:30. The loud thumping music could probably be heard a block away, and I turned to look at Elly. I had to get pretty close to speak so she could hear me. Drink? Non-alcoholic? I teased her. She rolled her eyes at me. Whatever. Her shoulders shrugged as she tried to slink away from me. With a frown, I followed Elly. I had no idea where the games would be if they'd even decided on it at all. Perhaps Jen just told me that to get me to want to come. Of course, that was before she knew she was going out of town. I hadn't told her I was coming to this party, and I certainly hadn't told her I was coming with Elly. The house was crowded, and we had to turn sideways to get through the throng. Admittedly, it was much easier to get through after Elly had cleared the path. Despite her nonchalant attitude towards a beverage, she'd led us to the kitchen where a few guys were standing around an ice-cold keg. Hey, Kenny G, want some brew? A couple of the guys snickered and clapped the smartass Doug Baker on the back for his efforts. I do, Elly said, as she grabbed a cup and held it out towards the hose. Whoa, Elephant is getting in the party spirit. How about you? He filled her cup as he nodded towards me. I could feel my cheeks getting a bit red, not from being embarrassed, but because he was making fun of my friend. My eyes shifted towards Elly. I'm good, I said, rather softly. Elly didn't even bother looking at me. Once her beer was full, she turned around and started sipping it. Okay, not sipping, chugging. I watched her for a moment before glancing around. No one was staring or pointing, so that was a good thing. But you should chill out with the name-calling, man, I said, as my eyes moved from Elly to the cup in her hand. I was starting to have second thoughts about this party in general. Elly and I could have played video games at my house. There wasn't anything here that we couldn't have gotten at my house, except all the assholes. This is a party, man, not an alternate universe. Elephant knows I'm just fucking with her, don't you? Doug the asshole reached out and tugged on Elly's hair. She responded by shrugging and holding out her cup. Whatever, just fill it up. I felt the anger bubbling inside of me. Who the hell did Doug think he was, anyway? He was just a dumbass with a cool haircut. Don't call her that again. I'm warning you, I said loudly. He smirked at me, and I watched as his eyes dropped to Elly's cleavage as he filled her cup again. My cheeks started to burn. Dance with me, Elly, I said, as I tried to get her away from those guys and the keg. She was going too fast, and I didn't like it. My overprotectiveness was starting to kick in. I'd made her come to this party, and I needed to keep her safe. What? No. She waved me off as she tilted her head back and chugged her second beer. Doug was watching, smiling like a predator. Do you want another refill? He asked. I saw the scene, playing it in my mind like some bad story. Elly drinking too much and passing out, and these guys with their hands all over her. The thought alone caused my fist to clench at my sides, ready to defend her, even though technically the jocks weren't doing anything wrong. Yet. I took the cup from Elly to make sure she didn't drink more and set it on the keg table. We do have to eventually go home, I said to her, as she frowned at me, reaching for her cup. I grabbed her hand and held it tightly between us. Yeah, in like 4 hours. I'm just bracing myself and at the same time participating in the high school ritual. She roughly pulled her hand from mine, staring me down, challenging me. Come on, Kenny G. Let the chunk drink and maybe someone will get lucky tonight, Doug commented. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I whipped my head around to Doug and yelled, Stop calling her names! Elly's mouth dropped open, but I barely saw it past the red that was clouding my vision. Doug looked shocked for only a millisecond before he put the hose down and stepped around the table. "No, I don't think I will. What are you going to do about it, Four Eyes?" Before my better-than-average brain could process the situation, my hand balled into a fist, and just like in those fighting games I played, it connected with his right eye. There were collective groans all around, and I barely had time to take them in before Doug was standing up straight again, his posture extremely offensive. He pulled his fist back and pummeled it right into my gut. The breath left me immediately, but I didn't have time to react before his other fist connected with my face, and my glasses were knocked off. "Stop!" I heard Elly cry out as I whipped my face back towards Doug, who was a blurry mass among other blurry masses. I could feel my left eye starting to swell, but I wasn't going to stop, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't get hit again because apparently the blurry masses kept the one from doing it. I felt a warm hand grab mine, and I was quickly pulled away and into the dark evening. "So much for video games," Elly muttered at my side. I pressed my free hand over my eye, the anger still vibrating through my body. Fuck him. I was still thinking about the potential of his hands on her. "You overreacted." "No, I reacted." I roughly pulled my hand from hers and shoved it into my jean pocket. "Why did you just stand there and let him call you names?" "Because you wanted to go to the stupid party in the first place and I didn't want to ruin it for you." Elly's voice had risen at least an octave, and I felt the tension in my jaw as I clenched my teeth. Great. Now she was mad at me. How did I explain to her something I didn't even understand myself? Yes, I thought there would be video games. Yes, I thought that now that I was Jen's boyfriend, I could go to a high school party where the cool kids played, and play along with them. Maybe I had hoped that the new Jen's boyfriend status would rub off on Elly, too, and that they wouldn't pick on her because she was with me. I was mad at myself for not being smart enough to realize that wasn't how it worked. Mad that as a result, Elly was put into the bullies' line of fire, and mad that Jen was the only reason why any of them accepted me in the first place. It wasn't right. Whatever, we left. You got your wish. I felt the sharp pinch of something hard being pressed against my chest, and tried to blink the blurriness away to see Elly's face as she stood, stopped in front of me. "I didn't want to go to that damn party in the first place. Take your glasses and go back. You'll be cool now that you have a Doug-induced black eye. I'm going home. Elly!" I tried to grab her, but she was too fast. I slipped my glasses on and considered myself lucky that the eye I could see out of also had a clear lens to gaze through. "Elly, don't be a bitch. Come back." She was across the street now and turned around to yell back at me. "Fuck off, Kent. Go back to your real friends." My jaw felt like it was going to pop right along with my fists. I'd just defended her, and somehow that made me the bad guy? She was so ridiculous. She made absolutely no sense. I about-faced and stomped back to my car. My party mood was gone. For now, I just wanted to drive. Maybe girl logic would come to me while I was drowning out my own thoughts with some Slipknot. Chapter 13. Kent. Elly was still mad about the party thing when I saw her the next day. She tried to duck into her house before I saw her in the backyard, but she wasn't fast enough. "Elly, come on, talk to me." She hesitated, and for a minute I thought she was going to blow me off completely, but lucky for me, she decided to walk over towards me. She didn't ask me to come inside. She just held onto the chain-link fence between our bodies. "Kent, you've been a shitty friend ever since Jen came into the picture. We don't hang out unless she's not here, and that's pretty fucked up. If you can't hang out with me, then we don't have a friendship anymore. You need to figure some shit out and talk to your girlfriend because I'm done trying to act cool about it." I stared at her, dumbfounded, and she must have taken that as a response because she retreated inside. On the walk home, I thought about what she said, and for 3 weeks I tried it her way. I invited her out with me and Jen. We went to the movies together, out to eat, but nothing had brought us closer. In fact, it had only seemed to push us further apart. She was so distant, so cold, and whereas I should have been enjoying the little time I had left in high school, I was stuck between a rock, Elly, and a hard place, Jen. Kent, I've been very patient with this Elly thing, Jen said, as we walked through the halls together between classes. I clenched my jaw. Elly wasn't a thing. She was my friend. Used to be, anyway. The squeeze in my chest reminded me that the thought was depressing. I know. I'm sorry, I'm just out of ideas since you don't want me hanging out with her alone. I'm out of options. Jen sighed as we entered class and sat down with me in the back. She took a hold of my hand and stared at them molded together. After a moment, she met my eyes. Can't look. I can't go on any more dates with you and her. You need to pick, me or her. I can't do this anymore. What? I felt my heart racing in my chest. You need to decide if you want to hang out with her or if you want to hang out with me. Why can't I do both? She shook her head and dropped her gaze to our hands. You know how I feel about her. She has feelings for you, Kent. Unfriendly feelings. Too friendly feelings. She's going to try to take you from me, and I can't let that happen. My heart beat faster as I held my breath. Was she going to tell me that she loved me? I waited, but the words didn't come. Jen, come on. That's not true. And not fair. She's just a friend. She shrugged. Maybe it's not fair, but that's the way it has to be. We don't get much time together as it is because of school and studying. You either go on dates with me alone, or we break up and you can see Elly whenever you want. It's just that simple. Class started and she turned around after giving my hands another squeeze. I stared at the back of her blonde head as I thought about the ultimatum that she'd just given me. I loved Jen. I was pretty sure of it. But Elly was my best friend. I tried to envision my life without Jen in it. I thought of her moving on, dating an asshole like Doug Baker. I didn't like that at all. It would crush me to see her with another guy, kissing him, laughing at his jokes, touching him. And then I thought about my life without Elly. It was what it had been prior to the past 3 weeks, and it was livable. By the end of class, I knew what I had to do. After class, I parted ways with Jen and intentionally bumped into Elly on the way to last period. Elly, hey. She glanced at me and then really looked at me. She knew something was wrong. Shit, I hadn't done a good enough job of hiding it. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to tell her what I needed to if she knew it was coming. What's wrong? She said, her eyes wide with worry. I looked down at the ground, willing myself to appear nonchalant. Jen, God, this was hard to say. Man up, Kent, and just say it. Jen and I aren't doing so well, and I need some time to work things out with her. Okay. Just, don't plan on seeing me for a while, or whatever. She was so quiet, but I didn't dare look up. I didn't want to see what my words had done to her. Whatever. Good luck with that. I hope it works out for you two. I could hear the soft quiver in her voice as she tried to hold it together. I watched as her Doc Martens sidestepped me and then disappeared. I turned and watched her walk away, her hand swiping at her face as she went. I was an asshole. but true love was worth it. It had to be because this hurt like hell. But breaking up with Jen would have hurt more. Mm, Jen murmured as she brought my hand to her lips for a quick kiss. Dry humping is so good, but not nearly as good as the real thing. Everyone thinks we're doing it anyway. Shouldn't we just go ahead and do it? I groaned as she rubbed against my already raw junk. No, doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. I want our first time to be special. She smiled. You mean your first time? She loved rubbing it in my face that she was experienced and I wasn't. That was the whole reason why I wasn't ready to have sex with her. She would probably expect something earth-shattering, and I was sure that for my first time inside of her, I would be anything but. Yes, my first time. But more importantly, our first time, as a couple. I pulled her down for a kiss, loving the way her moans filled the small space of her back seat. Do you love me? I felt my cheeks heat at the question. I did. I knew the answer, but I was afraid to tell her. What if she didn't say it back? Would I be able to handle that kind of rejection? Without knowing the answers to those questions, I remained silent. She smiled sadly and crawled off my lap, despite my protests. No, it's okay, Kent. I mean, it's okay if you don't feel it back. I quickly swallowed the lump in my throat before this moment passed by. Feel it back. Are you saying? She looked at me as if I were stupid and then nodded. Yes, I love you. But I don't want you to feel pressured to. I love you too. I wrapped her up in my arms and pressed my lips to hers. In that moment, I didn't think about anything else. Just me and Jen. And how happy we were when we were together. Chapter 14. Elly. Jake. Hey, Elly, how's it going? Elly. Fine. Jake. Why don't I believe you? Elly. Because you're a weird I am mind reader? Jake. What's wrong? Wait, let me guess. Kent. Your lack of response makes me think I'm right on the money. What happened? I haven't been online in a while. Spill. Elly. I think we aren't friends anymore. Jake. What? Elly. Yeah, he told me a few weeks ago that he needed space. Jake. Were you stalking him? Elly. If you think stalking means Kent begging me to hang out with him and Jen and me saying yes, then sure. But I don't think that's what that word means. Jake. Why did you say yes? Elly. Because he asked me to? Jake. Elly, if he asked you to jump off of a cliff, would you do that too? You know what? Don't answer that. Elly. I'm pathetic. Jake. No, he is. He's going to lose a very cool friend. But you really shouldn't let him abuse you like that. Elly. I know. Jake. Prom's coming up soon, isn't it? Are you going? Elly. Doubtful. Jake. Elly, come on. Isn't there someone you want to go with? Elly. ... Jake. Besides him? Elly. No, it's fine. It's a stupid school dance anyway. Jake. You'll regret it if you don't go. Elly. Are you drunk? Jake. No. Why? Elly. Because only a drunk person would think that I would regret not going to a stupid school dance. Jake. ... Elly. Really? I should be that loser who goes to prom by themselves? Jake. Why not? Show them Elly isn't afraid of being alone. Show Kent that you don't need him to have a good time. Elly. ... I don't know. Jake. Think about it. I said my goodbyes and turned off the computer for the evening. My mom was due home soon from work, and she hated it when I was on the computer chatting with boys. I'd have thought she'd be happy that I was chatting to boys, seeing as how I never dated. But I guess that was part of her plan. Keep Elly fat so she won't get knocked up before she's legal. If that was her plan, it was working. I brushed my teeth and hair, got into my PJs, and climbed into bed with my CD Walkman and headphones. I turned out the lights and put the headphones on. Metallica's Load album blasted into my ears, roiling my emotions, fueling the angst that was clinging to me. My weeks without Kent had been lonely, empty. I did nothing but go to and from school, homework and chores, and singing. I did that for a couple of hours every day after school while my mom was still at work. While Until It Sleeps was mellowing me out, I felt the bed dip beside me. Go away! A hand on my shoulder shook me, too hard and skinny to be my mother's. I let out a yelp and sat up quickly after pushing the hand away. Mom! It was all I could get out before a hand covered my mouth and most of my nose. I panicked and bit the fingers, not wanting to be molested or worse in my bed. My headphones were ripped from my head, and the metal music was replaced by Kent's voice. Elly, goddammit, you bit me. But what the hell did you expect? I pushed him backwards. He fell with a thud onto the floor. Elly! His voice was a loud whisper. What? The bed dipped again as he sat down. Just stop for a second. Why should I? What the hell are you doing here? Aren't you afraid your girlfriend will find out? Stop. I'm sorry. She said I needed to choose you or her, and I chose her. My chest tightened. Was that supposed to make me feel better? Why was he still grounding dirt into my still open wound? Right. I could hear the tension in my voice. I pleaded with myself to straighten it out. So, what are you doing here, then? What did I expect him to say? That he missed me? That he made a huge mistake and that he wanted me instead of Jen? Can't go home. No. He was firm on that, at least. I sighed softly, not having the energy to fight with him, and lay back down. Getting comfortable after rolling over, my back to him. He would hopefully get the hint and get the hell out of my room. He wanted me out of his life, and he was going to get his wish. I'd give him all the room he could handle. Elly, he whispered. I ignored him, my eyes wide open in the dark, my chest constricting with the thought of him leaving me. I jiggled around in the bed as Kent laid down next to me. I heard his breath, strong and steady after a few minutes. He'd fallen asleep. His mom was going to kill him. I turned my head, my breath hot on my shoulder as I whispered, Kent? How can I fix this? He'd tricked me. I huffed as I rolled back over and pressed my lips tightly together as my mind reeled. Fix what? You have the girlfriend you always wanted. I don't want to have to pick you or her. I want to have you both in my life. How can I have both of you in my life? I don't know. I got up long enough to grab my CD Walkman and turn the volume all the way up. It was very soft from a distance, I let Metallica play between us. Jen probably didn't even know who they were. I took comfort in that as I closed my eyes. For now, the world was right. Metallica and Kent in my bed. Sometime during the night, Kent had left my bed, and sometime during the night, I had a dream which had me convinced that if I just talked to Jen, we could come to some understanding. Something that would fix what was going on between all of us. So I waited until just before lunch the next day before choosing to seek Jen out. She was just a girl, and early on in our relationship, she was even kind of cool sometimes, for a cheerleader. She saw me coming towards her and broke away from her friends. She didn't want an audience. That was a good thing, I thought. Ellie, what can I do for you? I licked my lips and pressed them together. I needed to force my words out before I lost my nerve. She was so intimidating with her arms crossed over her chest like that. We can't keep putting Kent in the middle of whatever this is between us. You mean you wantin' to jump Kent's bones? Her perfectly manicured eyebrow rose, clearly not convinced, and rightly so, that I didn't want to jump her boyfriend's bones. I sighed heavily and shook my head. I don't know why you think that. He isn't into me like that, Jen. He's into you. I motioned to her beautiful body. She looked me up and down and nodded, seemingly satisfied with the truth in that statement. True. But I don't care for the way you stare at him like he's a nice big piece of meat. Not that I can blame you. Oh, God, did I stare at Kent like he was a giant ice cream cone dripping on a hot summer's day? I swallowed hard, trying to remember if that was how I acted when I was around him. Sometimes I did catch myself staring at him. Damn it. How could I convince her? What would put her mind at ease? I glanced around, and the solution came to me immediately when I saw 4 people walking into the lunchroom together. 2 couples. I'm sorry I do that. I don't see him like that, I swear. I have a boyfriend. The lie came out easily enough, and Jen's face softened instantly. Oh my God, you do? Her hands raised to her lips, as if she were extremely shocked. I nodded. Yeah, his name is Jake. He's an online boyfriend, but we're exclusive and stuff. Oh my God, that's so great. Her hand came to my shoulder. I was expecting claws, but instead there was just friendly vibes. No longer did she see me as a threat. No longer did she feel she had to protect what she thought was hers. I'd essentially castrated myself, so to speak. And I'd fixed it, with just one little white lie. I smiled to myself. Kent was going to be thrilled when he found out. Men were so dumb sometimes, and I felt extremely proud that he'd told me the problem, and in less than 24 hours, I'd done what he didn't think to do in the past 7 months. Chapter 15. Kent. I looked down at my fingers and frowned at the injury Ellie's teeth had created. It had only been 14 hours, and I already missed her. I shook my head. It didn't matter. We would find a way to work it out after I solidified my relationship with Jen a bit more. I was on my way to lunch, my usual, with Jen, when I saw Jen and Ellie together. My feet froze, and I quickly pushed myself against the nearest locker, watching carefully. For some reason, I would willingly take a punch for Ellie when it involved a dude. But when it came to Jen, I was going to stay as far away from it as I could. I couldn't hear what they were talking about. I could only read their body language. Were they talking about me? Was Ellie giving Jen a piece of her mind? Judging by Jen's genuine smile, I guessed that wasn't it. Move it, Lytel. I stammered as one of the football jocks glared at me. Sorry. I was about to step aside when I looked up again. My mouth dropped open, and the world seemed to move in slow motion as I saw Jen hug Elly. I said, "Move it!" The jock pushed my shoulder, and like a cardboard cutout of myself, I went tumbling to the ground. His companions laughed amongst themselves, and I was too stunned to fight back. When I stood up and looked back again, they were both entering the cafeteria together. I quickly chased after them, not wanting to miss out on whatever Freaky Friday stuff was going on. "Long have you two been going out?" Jen asked excitedly. I felt a pinch in the middle of my forehead as I tried to comprehend the question. Elly was going out with someone? Why hadn't she told me that last night when I'd snuck in to see her? Elly shrugged her shoulders and looked around uncomfortably. It was normally a tell that she was lying, but it was also a genuine reaction when she was talking to strangers. And Jen was practically one since they never talked to each other. I closed in and wrapped my arm around Jen's waist, pulling her into my side, my eyes on Elly's. Someone was finally interested in taming the Elly beast? I watched her eyes widen and her cheeks flush, and instantly cursed myself. It hadn't come out right. Before I could say anything, Jen smacked my chest. "Kent, that's not nice. Any guy would be lucky to go out with her." I clenched my jaw tightly. I knew that, but I knew that Jen didn't. She hated Elly. "It's okay, Jen. I know how Kent feels about his friend and dating. I'm dating Jake." I frowned at her. She was either talking about Jake Fitzpatrick, who was the smelliest guy I'd ever met, and whose face was a mine of acne, or she was talking about Jake, the online guy who she'd always insisted had a girlfriend, and they were just friends. I went with the most obvious choice. Jake Fitzpatrick? The looks I received from both Jen and Elly, if looks could kill, would have struck me dead in a millisecond. And then Elly's eyes turned glassy, and she looked away again. "No, thanks for your vote of confidence in my choice in men, and their choice in me. Jake Collins, the guy I've been talking to online for the past couple of years." Oh, it was all I could think of to say. "I thought he was involved with someone." Jen looked between us, her happy face turning skeptical. "He was, but she cheated on him, and I've been coaching him through it, and, well, stuff happens." Jen nodded, completely eating up the story. I wasn't buying it. "When did this happen?" Elly's head whipped around and she frowned at me. "What? You don't believe me?" "Just seems sudden. And you never talked about it before now." I shrugged my shoulder and caressed Jen's at the same time, trying to act casual while giving Elly the third degree. "Well, I'm not comfortable sharing my love life with you, Kent. And the feeling is mutual, so back off." I felt my cheeks flood with heat, and I nodded and kept my eyes down. She was right, and I was an asshole for doubting her. She broke away from us, pointing over her shoulder to the Coke machine in the hallway. When she was out of earshot, Jen finally spoke her piece. "Is she lying?" I watched her blue eyes watch me. My mind was reeling as I tried to figure out the best course of action. "I'm not sure." "You're not sure? She's your best friend." As if she needed to remind me. "Yeah, but, we haven't been that close lately. And it's not like I would have met the guy or anything." Jen snickered to herself. "I'm glad her tensions are off you anyway. I don't have to worry about her kissing you or molesting you or anything." I feigned disgust. "Come on, Jen, she's like my sister." She smiled and looked ridiculously smug. "That's good to hear, Kenny Pooh." She stood up onto her toes and pressed a kiss to my lips. I smiled and shook my head at her silliness. Elly into me and wanting to steal me away from Jen was silly. "I've been telling you that for months. And now, finally, you believe me? She shrugged her shoulders after she pulled away. It takes a while to build trust. We grabbed our lunches from the line and then sat down at our usual table. I wasn't surprised at all when Elly didn't come back to sit with us. She was probably in the library using the computer to email her new boyfriend. I shifted in my seat, trying to push down the ball of fire I was feeling in the pit of my stomach. The whole cafeteria slowly quieted as the administration announced the daily news. The topic of prom came up, and I looked at Jen. She was smiling at me so sweetly. Tickets went on sale tomorrow, and I didn't want to be left without one. I leaned in close and whispered into her ear, "Will you go with me?" She didn't seem surprised by the question in the least, as she pressed a kiss to my lips and nodded. Of course. Who else would I go with? I laughed. I could think of countless other guys who would rather you go to prom with them. Yeah, but none of them are my ridiculously cute boyfriend. She purred as her lips found my neck. I shivered and then put my hand on her thigh, our signal that she was embarrassing me. She giggled softly before pulling away, patting my hand on her thigh. Sorry, I can't help myself. I have a feeling that prom is going to be a very special night. The emphasis made my palms sweat. I wasn't ready to disappoint her in the sack and potentially lose her just yet. The thought of losing my virginity at prom was all I could think of for the rest of the day. I couldn't afford to be distracted. Finals were coming up quickly. I met Jen at my locker and pressed a kiss to her cheek when she grabbed my hand. I think I'm going to walk home today. Is everything okay? Yeah, I just need the fresh air. And I need to make sure I look good in my tux. I pressed a hand to my flat stomach and she laughed. All right, tough guy. I'll call you later. I nodded and watched as she walked away. I started on my walk and exhaled a deep breath that I didn't know I was holding, and instantly felt 10 shades better. I wasn't ready to lose her. I wasn't ready for her name calling, her looks of pity. I knew they were coming. I could barely last 5 minutes in my pants when she was grinding away at me in my car. What was I going to do when the barriers were removed? I pushed my glasses up my nose as I stared down the sidewalk ahead of me. I'd know Elly's backpack anywhere. I jogged to catch up. Elly! She turned around, and where I was expecting a smile on her lips, there was only a tightly held line. You're still mad? I didn't mean it. She rolled her eyes and kept walking. Whatever. This is an ongoing theme on our little walks lately. You being an asshole? I know, you should work on that. Or is that the secret to bagging the hot chicks? Elly, didn't. I haven't. We haven't. It was too hard to get it out of my constricting throat. What a shame. You should do it before you both go off to different colleges. She'll probably go to Harvard or something. We both got early acceptance into NU. I was waiting for her to say something, but it was becoming quickly apparent that she wasn't going to say anything. How about you? You wanted to go to McNally. Have you heard back from them? She nodded and held onto her backpack straps tighter, turning her knuckles white as she stared at the sidewalk in front of us. Yep. I didn't get in. Elly, that sucks. But you still have your backup schools. You applied to NU too, didn't you? She nodded. I haven't heard anything back from them yet. I'm going to be the kid who says they're going to take a year off to backpack and stuff and ends up never going to college and works in the grocery store instead. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The thought of Elly spending the rest of her life here working in a grocery store was absolutely absurd. She was going to go places in her life, see things, experience things. probably become famous if she let other people in on her musical talent. It's not funny, Kent. It is. You'll get in somewhere. You're not a complete loser. That's not what you implied earlier. I sighed. You have to stop holding grudges. I'm a word fumbler, and I say stupid shit. Often things I don't mean, and you know that. But since we're alone, tell me the truth. Are you really in a relationship with the infamous Jake? She didn't even blink before she blatantly changed the subject. Did you ask Jen to prom yet? Yes. I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. Are you going? No, it's a stupid dance. But we said last year we'd skipped junior prom and promised each other during a late-night video game session that if we were single for senior prom that we'd go together. I remember feeling ecstatic at the idea. I'd finally have a reason to dance with her and hold her close to me. I'd be able to create that memory, and I had hoped it would be enough to carry me through. Her voice cut through the memory of that night. We said if we were both single, and we're not, we're both taken. And you have a date. Yeah, but I always assumed that we'd still be going together. With our dates. Yeah, well, that didn't end up happening. You can tell me all about it, though, when Jen is gone for the summer. It won't be the same, Ellie. I want you there. Chapter 16. Ellie. Why do you want me there? You'll be too busy dealing with Jen. I could just imagine him standing at her side the whole night, holding her little diamond-encrusted clutch purse as she laughed and talked about designer clothes or something with the rest of the cheerleaders. Maybe she'll be too busy to notice if I slip off and dance with you. I looked up to the sky and shook my head. What the hell was I going to do with him? Seriously. We were friends, strictly platonic, and yet he wanted to dance with me. We can dance in the privacy of my room or yours. We don't need to do it at prom. He was quiet for a few moments, and I wondered what he was thinking. Was he considering the proposition? The thought of his hands on me, even in the most innocent of places, had my gut clenching and my thighs pressing together. I peeked a glance at Kent, and he was in the middle of pushing his glasses up his nose. It's a rite of passage, Ellie. He tried again. No, I'm not going to bust in on your prom date. Are you really going out with Jake? Damn it. He had me cornered. Prom or Jake? Prom or Jake? It had been painful enough lying to him the first time, but if I told him that I wasn't going out with Jake, then he would probably tell Jen, and then she'd hate me even more. I was stuck and committed. Yes. Is that so hard to believe? No. Yes. I just figured you'd go out with someone you could actually hold hands with and stuff. I felt my anger steaming. I could find someone, the most repulsive of guys. Probably, but I didn't want that. I didn't want anyone except the one guy I couldn't have. I'm sure what Jake and I do is way more exhilarating than anything you do with Jen in real life. I watched as his eyes went wide. What does that mean? What are you doing with him? That's none of your business. It's between me and Jake. He scoffed. Because you aren't doing anything. We are. Late at night when my mom is sleeping. Why do you think I've been so tired lately? It had really been because of Kent, but I could twist this to my advantage. What was one more lie? You are so full of crap. Whatever. We walked a few more minutes in silence before he couldn't contain himself any further. Do you cyber with him? I almost gave myself away by scrunching up my nose. Almost. I pushed him on the elbow gently. Stop it. It's none of your business. And if you don't quit, you're going to imagine things you wished you hadn't. His jaw was twitching, and his ears were turning red, and he avoided my gaze. I finally smiled. Any discomfort he was experiencing was totally his fault. Okay, maybe partly my fault. This is your stop, Kent. See you later. I moved to go across the street, but his hand grabbed me. So it's serious? I looked down at his hand, which was so tight it was causing slight pain. Yeah, I applied to Texas State. If I get in, then I'm going there to be with him. I swallowed hard as I watched the emotions swim over his face. First surprise, then disappointment, and pain, and finally sadness. Oh, great. Is there a reason I shouldn't go to Texas State? His eyes were on our feet, and he shrugged his shoulder, dropping his hand and shoving it into his pocket. Nope. I'm sure it's a great school, and the weather will be great, and yeah, you'll get to be around all those country music lovers. I don't know why I was expecting him to say something along the lines of, I love you, Ellie, please don't go. I would die without you. But I did. And of course, I was disappointed. I can block out the country music, or maybe it will grow on me. Probably. You're pretty good at adapting. Was I? I didn't think so. See you later? I was eager to go and get away from his sad puppy dog eyes. He would get over my fake choice to go to Texas State soon enough. Yes. At prom. If you're going away to Texas State, then I'm demanding it. You're going to come with me. And Jen. Well, yeah, and Jen. I'll buy your ticket. I shook my head. They don't allow threesomes, you know that. He was blushing, and once I realized why, I slapped his arm. Kent, quit being such a perv. And ooh, never. Chapter 17. Kent. I paced back and forth in the kitchen, waiting for Ellie to come downstairs. I'd wanted to stay up there and help her get dressed if she needed it. Maybe get a reassuring hug from her, too, before Jen arrived. The limo was going to arrive with her in it any minute now. My mother was sitting at the table observing me. She certainly wasn't making things any better. Son, you can't rush a lady. I wasn't rushing her, I wanted to see her. I wanted to know what she looked like in a pretty non-black dress. I'd never had the opportunity because she never wore them because of her self-esteem. I stopped pacing long enough to wipe some sweat that had fallen from my brow. I didn't want it to stain my tux or make it translucent or whatever sweat did to fancy, stuffy clothes. I'm just a little nervous. That was a lie. I was extremely nervous. Why? Because my girlfriend was picking us up, and I was bringing another girl to prom with us. Well, don't ruin your shirt before your date even gets here. Mom stood from the table and came over, putting her hands on my shoulders. She looked me in the eye, her face trying to be a calming force. It's just a dance. It's not just a dance. This is prom. It is prom, that's true. Why are you going as a threesome again? Couldn't Ellie find a date of her own? I instantly came to her defense. Because Ellie is my best friend, and I couldn't let her skip prom just because her boyfriend doesn't live here and couldn't make it. Besides, with Jen and Ellie being friends now, it just seemed like the right thing to do. I smiled a little, trying to cover the twisting knot in my stomach. If I hadn't been in a relationship with Jen, I would have asked her. Gladly, without hesitation. I tried to lie and tell myself it wasn't because I had more than friendly feelings for her. But I knew that wasn't it. But I had Jen, and Jen was perfect. I had to see where it went with her, or I would regret it for the rest of my life. I pulled my mind away from that as I glanced at the clock. In roughly 3 minutes, Jen's limo was going to be here. "Where's El—" My voice dropped in my throat as my eyes met the answer to my question. Ellie was coming down the stairs, and to me, she looked better than any video game character I secretly had the hots for. What did it matter she had a little more weight on her than the average girl? She was absolutely beautiful. "This is ridiculous, Kent. Why are you making me go?" After my eyes stopped committing her to memory, I realized she'd spoken to me. "Because it's prom, Els. Everyone has to go. It's a rite of passage." As I came closer, I felt a lump forming in my throat. I swallowed it down somehow, and with hot cheeks, I admitted, "You look very pretty." "Of course you would think so. I look more like Jen than ever." That stung. I'd paid her a compliment, and she, like always, brushed it off. Before I could retort, my mom pushed me towards the stairs. I grabbed onto the railing for assistance as she lifted her camera. "Get together quickly. Your ride will be here any minute." I smelled Ellie's perfume, and she stepped in closer, but not close enough to touch me. I didn't touch her, either. I didn't want to mess up her clothes, or other things. "Could you two act like you like each other?" My mom waved us inward, signaling for us to get closer. Ellie took a tiny baby step towards me, and I manned up and grabbed her around her shoulder, pulling her into my side. I felt her relax against me. I smiled and was instantly blinded by the flash on my mother's camera. "Did you get it, Mom?" I asked, still holding on to Ellie, not quite ready to let her go. I hadn't been this close to her in months, perhaps longer. "Let me get one more." The flash blinded us again, and as I stared down at Ellie, I saw spots on bits of her face. She was smiling up at me, and just before I could comment, the doorbell interrupted. I quickly released her and straightened out my coat. I wondered if Jen was going to notice that I smelled like her. "Ready to go?" Sure," I heard Ellie say behind me. She did nothing to actually try to convince me that those words were true. "You two have a good time." My mom opened the door. I was expecting Jen to be standing there, but the driver was there instead. "Kent Lytell?" the driver asked, looking me in the eye. I nodded and then looked behind me to make sure Ellie was following. She was. I kissed my mom goodbye and then led the way to the limo. After the driver opened the door, I climbed in and almost instantly felt myself being pulled down. Warm lips met mine, and for an instant I was frozen, trying to get my bearings. I returned the kiss, and then Jen pulled away, letting me sit down fully. "Hey, baby," she said. My eyes nearly popped out of my head as I took in her low-cut red sequin dress. It was enough to tempt any man. I cleared my throat. "Hey, Jen." I tried to avert my gaze from her cleavage, and my eyes landed on Ellie's ass as she walked the little way to the seat, farthest away from us. Firm fingers rested under my chin and pulled my gaze away. I smiled innocently at Jen. "Do you like my dress?" Inwardly, I sighed in relief. She hadn't noticed me ogling my best friend. "Yes, it's very pretty." I smiled and looked her over again. What the hell was she doing with me? She was much too hot to be hanging around with a geek like me. I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe tonight would be the night when I was elected prom king, only to have a bucket of blood dropped on my head. "You'll be the most handsome guy there, I'm sure." She leaned forward and pressed another kiss to my lips. "I'm so lucky." I frowned. The irony lost on me that neither me or my best friend were very good at taking compliments. Her fingers went to the corner of my mouth and pushed them upwards. "Smile, Kenny. We're going to prom." She gasped suddenly, making me jump. I know what will make you feel better. She unhanded me and slid off the seat. She went to the little fridge under the window and pulled out a little bottle of clear liquid courage. She came back and sat next to me, a mischievous grin on her lips as she wiggled the bottle back and forth in front of my eyes. Drink me, Kenny. I don't know, Jen. We could get into a lot of trouble. My eyes couldn't help but follow the bottle back and forth. On the one hand, I wasn't a drinker. I hadn't ever seen the appeal of wanting to lose yourself and act like an idiot. On the other hand, I could definitely see the merit of wanting to lose myself tonight. My best friend was across the limo, fists balled up in her pretty lap. No proper date by her side. And then there was Jen, who looked good enough to eat, and who might still be pulling the ultimate prank. Whatever happened tonight, I was going to need a little extra help. One shot wouldn't hurt. She opened up the cap and pushed it against my lips. I didn't want to ruin my tux, so I tilted my head back and drank as she said, "Loosen up and drink it." It burned all the way down, and when it was empty, I turned my head to the side and coughed. I heard clapping and Jen cheering, and then another dribble of liquid was trying to hit my shirt. I tilted my head back and drank, seeing no other way out. I coughed again and put my hand to my stomach. Before I got my wits about me, a third one was forced upon me. I drank it. I didn't want to seem like a wimp. I glanced towards Elly. Was she going to be upset that I gave into peer pressure? We used to make fun of people who did. Before I could think that through further, Jen's lips were on mine. She was alluring and forceful, and as the alcohol seeped into my bloodstream, I didn't mind. I even let myself go a little, forgetting for a moment that we weren't alone. I didn't notice that the limo had stopped until I felt Elly's high heel crushing my shoe. I winced but didn't cry out as I climbed out after dislodging myself from Jen, who was giggling, I assumed, because I was already clearly inebriated. As the crisp air hit my face, I inhaled deeply, taking the sweet, oxygen-rich fresh air into my body. Jen pressed herself against me as I leaned on the limo, her red manicured fingers slightly digging into my chest. It would have been hotter if my head didn't feel like it might float away into the evening sky like a lost balloon. This is going to be the best night of our high school years. You ready for some fun? She asked, as she pressed another soft kiss to my lips. I nodded and smiled. She smelled good and felt good as my hands slid over her waist and around to her ass. I gave it a nice squeeze before pushing off the side of the limo to try to stand on my own 2 feet. Best night. She took my hand and kissed the back of it before pulling me towards the dance. I looked around as I followed after her, wondering where Elly had disappeared to. She was supposed to be dancing with me, at least once. I was half her prom date. Or was she half my prom date and I was her whole one? Whatever. I shook my head as Jen took a hold of my hand and kissed the back of it before pulling me towards the dance. Just inside the hotel, we were pulled aside for a formal picture. Jen posed next to me and I posed for the second time of the evening, removing my glasses for the picture. We held onto each other and I forced a smile so we could get it over with. The camera flashed once, and then I looked away, trying to see if I could catch a glimpse of Elly. The camera flashed again, and I heard the cameraman yell, "Next!" Suddenly I was pulled to the side and pushed up against the wall. Oh my God, you took off your glasses. You know how hot that makes me. No fair. Can we go somewhere? I can't wait anymore, Kent. I have to have you. Jen. And then her lips were on mine, her hands on my body, doing things and going places that weren't appropriate for public viewing. What? She slowed a bit so I could think. Not I paused. My pants were becoming very uncomfortable with the hard-on I was sporting. Too many people. She grinned up at me. Okay, I'll go find us a more private spot. Go walk off that steel in your pants. She pressed another kiss to my lips and then left me standing there alone. Chapter 18. Elly. This was stupid. Why was I even here? And dressed up? For who? For Kent, who was sucking face with Jen in front of everyone? No, I was done with this. He wouldn't even notice I was gone anyway. Just before I reached the picture guy, I felt a warm hand around mine. Dance with me, Kent said, as he pulled me towards him. He was already off balance, his glasses missing, his eyes wide. If not now, then you have to before the end of the night. I stared at him as if he had two heads. What? I looked over my shoulder, wondering if someone was going to prank me or if the devil was going to come and burn me alive. The devil in this scenario being Jen. It's our senior prom. We have to dance together tonight sometime. Kent offered me a smile. You're drunk. I gently tried to pull my hand away from his. What does that matter about a dance? He replied, still holding onto my hand. You're just... I stopped and swallowed back the self-pitying words I was going to say and smiled graciously. Okay, let's dance. I gripped onto his hand tightly and pulled him towards the edge of the dance floor. Kent moved with me. It wasn't a fight to get him to come. Once we were safely amongst a group of people, I let go of his hand and put a little distance between us. The music was slow, but the song was just about over. I smiled nervously up to him. You should probably put your glasses back on so you can see where your two left feet land. Kent laughed. I can see perfectly fine. The world is blurry because of the alcohol. No. I grabbed his glasses from his pocket and put them onto his face. It's because your glasses were off. Well, there went that argument. Jeez. He stuck his tongue out. I looked down at my feet as the music changed to something peppy and upbeat. I didn't want to embarrass myself, so I just stayed still, contemplating my next move. But I saw Kent's feet shuffling awkwardly and looked up. He was a terrible dancer. I laughed and shook my head. No, stop. You're terrible. This was an awful idea. Kent laughed. Fine, I have to go to the bathroom. He grinned. Next slow dance is mine, Else. And with that, he moved off towards the bathroom. I smiled as I watched him go. The fluttering in my chest at the thought of a slow dance with him was happening again. I shook my head and went the same way, ducking into the restroom. While I was squatting over the toilet, I overheard some girls chattering amongst themselves. It was a loud jumble. Most of them were in here to gossip and fix their faces. Oh my God, did you see Suze's dress? Barf! Whoever told her that gold would look good on her told her the biggest fucking lie. Did you see Henry? Oh my God, he is so damn hot in his tux. Who do you think is going to win prom queen? I'll tell you who isn't. Jen. Not with Kent Lytell as her date. I don't understand what she sees in him. I hear he has a huge dick and a really long tongue. Oh! The girls giggled, and then their voices faded as I exited the bathroom. I sat there a few moments longer and stared at the floor, holding my dress up so it wouldn't get dirty. The reality of the situation was coming back to me again. He wasn't here with me. He was here with her. It wasn't a date between us. I was his pitiful friend who couldn't get a boy to ask her to prom. What was I even doing here? I'd come. That was what he asked me to do. I'd done my duty. It was time to go. I finished up in the bathroom and then headed for the lobby, my chin held high. It only lasted a few steps before I saw some guys slapping each other on the chest and murmuring amongst themselves as they were obviously spying on something they shouldn't be. I headed that way. I felt the anger boiling in my chest, the Salt and Pepper song in the background driving me to be ballsier than I usually would be. I was ready to grab onto their collars and yank them backwards like the drooling dogs they were, when I caught a glimpse of blonde hair through the large crack in the doorway. Yes, Kent. Her voice sent chills down my spine as my eyes moved down her body, which intersected Kent's where they both bent in half. Jen's hands were on his chest, her nails curled into his tux shirt. His hands were on her hips, which were moving up and down in a rhythmic motion. I put my hands on a pair of shoulders to hold myself up, and then I pushed off. I couldn't believe he was having sex. In public. On the floor. Especially when he knew I was here. I went to the bathroom and he decided it was a good time to get a quickie from his girlfriend? Oh, poor elephant, I heard faintly. It barely registered above the heavy pounding in my body. I drew the air into my lungs when I burst outside. I wasn't sure how I'd gotten there, but I was glad that I had. I could leave it all behind and try to get past it. I wouldn't have to see the smirk of contentment on his face when he finished and found me. And I wouldn't have to pretend like I didn't know anything when I did. I wouldn't have to hide the hurt that was surely showing in my eyes and that I felt so badly in my chest. My knees were starting to give out, so I started walking faster, wanting to get away before someone witnessed my impending breakdown. Why had it taken me so long to accept it? Kent didn't want me. He didn't see me that way. He wasn't mine outside of the little friendship we sometimes indulged. We were going away to college soon. We would part ways. Anything that we ever had or ever would have between us was friendship. I didn't know if I could actually still be friends with him. I barely noticed the scenery pass by, but when I looked up, I was staring at the 7-Eleven sign. It glowed like a sunbeam shining on a church. My feet, aching from the high heels that were too high, carried me across the busy intersection to my version of heaven. A store filled with sugary goodness, bright-colored packages that were meant to instill a feeling of joy and happiness, and I needed some. I went to the Slurpee machine and grabbed the biggest paper cup they had. I mixed the flavors before putting the lid on. My fingers fumbled with the straw that was almost as long as the distance between my mouth and the bottom of the gigantic cup. I got it all to the counter, my mouth readying itself for the sweetness to come, when I realized that I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. I didn't have Kent. I didn't have anything. Tears filled my eyes quickly as I rushed out of the store, my merchandise left for the clerk to take care of. I couldn't see at all, the tears blocking my vision. I tripped when my heels sunk into the grassy plot next to the store and I fell, my chin bumping the damp grass beneath me. Awesome. I got up and ripped my heels off my feet, throwing them against the dumpster just to my right. They each made a satisfying thunk against the side before they crumpled onto the pavement below. I turned my attention back to the task at hand. I needed to get home so that I could wallow alone. I didn't want anyone to drive by and see the poor Elly walking home alone from prom after being humiliated by her best and closest friend. Tears prickled at my eyes again, and I forced my feet to keep walking. The drive was only 20 minutes, but the walk was a torturous 3-hour one. As I climbed the stairs to my room, my body was physically exhausted, my mind mentally exhausted, and I just wanted the sweet relief of sleep. I hoped it would be a dreamless one. I stripped out of my dress and climbed into bed. not caring that my feet were disgusting and dirtying my sheets. I'd take care of everything tomorrow. Everything, including Kent. Chapter 19. Kent. I awoke the next morning with no memory of getting home. My head hurt like hell. I didn't have much time to process before my mother came into my room and pulled the curtains wide open. The curtain rings rattled against the metal rod. "Did you have fun last night, son?" Her voice was deceptively cheery. I groaned as I tried to block the sun coming in the window with my hand. "Mom, 5 more minutes." I rolled over. I wasn't ready to face her, or anyone with my head in its current state. "No, you need to get up now. You're going to lunch." She grabbed her pillow and all my blankets and left the room. The thought of food made my stomach turn. As I tried to tell myself everything would be okay if I just went slow, my mother burst into my room again. "Kent, you have 10 minutes. Get up now." All right, I said, as I rolled from the bed. I knew not to mess with her when she sported that voice. When I came downstairs, I was greeted with a PB&J with a side of pretzels. The table was set for one, and my mother was sitting across from the plate, clasped hands resting on the table. "Come have a seat. We need to talk." I moved slowly to the seat and sat down. "What are we talking about, Mom?" "We're talking about why you didn't give Elly a ride home from the prom last night." I felt the confusion deep in my hazy brain as I struggled to piece the night together. "What do you mean?" "She walked home." I frowned. "I don't know why she—" I put my hands on my head and winced. It just couldn't process anything. I was struggling to remember last night, but nothing was coming. What had I done? What could I have done to send her away from the prom? Maybe she had a really good time with someone else. Maybe she'd been drinking too. I tried to eat another pretzel, but my stomach was telling me to quit while I was ahead. My mother waited patiently for me to say anything further. "I need to go call Elly," I said as I stood from the chair. "Good luck," my mom murmured as I moved towards the stairs. She stayed at the table, still watching me. An uneasiness settled in my stomach. Or was it just the hangover? She was probably just overreacting. That's what moms did. Instead of calling, I decided to get dressed and started walking. I figured the walk would help flush the rest of the alcohol cells from my body. I also hoped that it would give my mind time to figure out what happened last night before I had to face my best friend, who may or may not have enjoyed herself last night. It was only a 5-minute walk to Elly's house, and when I arrived, I rang the doorbell and stepped back, pushing my glasses up my nose. I wiped my sweating palms on my jeans and then shoved them into my pockets. I had to look casual when I went in there. Who knew what I'd be battling? As 1 minute passed, and then 2, I began to worry. I pressed the button for the doorbell once more, and then waited. Still nothing. There was no way I was leaving here without talking to her. I glanced around to make sure no one was staring at me, and then I moved around to the side of the house. With less grace and more determination, I managed to climb the tree to her bedroom window. My eyes narrowed as I peeked inside. I was relieved when I spotted her on her bed, belly on the mattress, her feet kicked up in the air. She was writing something, headphones on her ears. I shimmied further down the branch and reached for the window. A tug produced no movement. Damn it. She'd locked her window? Since when? Maybe it was just stuck. It was getting hotter outside by the minute, and my hangover did not appreciate it. Once again, I reached over and tried to lift it, but it didn't budge. I sighed and started knocking on the window. Gentle knocking turned into loud knocking, and before I knew it, I stopped, afraid I'd break the glass. I looked down when I saw some movement. It was just a squirrel. When I looked up again, Elly was standing at her window, an angry glare on her pretty face. I screamed in surprise and then covered my lips, embarrassed. I cleared my throat and raised my eyebrows at her, pointing at the window. She shook her head and I faintly heard her through the glass. "Go home! Elly, I want to talk to you!" My voice bounced off the glass and hit my ears, causing me to wince. Too loud. "No, go home!" With that, she closed her blinds. Damn it. After I took a minute to soothe my pride, I climbed down the tree and stared up at her window. No movement. What the hell had I done? Why was she so angry? Surely it would pass and she'd talk to me in school on Monday. I stuffed my hands into my pockets and started my walk home. I didn't get very far before Jen's car pulled up beside me. I blinked against the sun as it bounced off her windshield. The window rolled down and she yelled out to me, "Kenny, where are you going?" "I'm walking home," I said, half blinded. I blinked at her and stared until she came into complete view. I was amazed, as always. She looked perfect. She didn't look like she'd had a drop to drink last night. And then it dawned on me that perhaps she hadn't. "I'm hungover." "I can see that, baby. I'm taking you out for lunch. Didn't your mom tell you?" Jen looked behind her as someone honked. She moved a little further down the street before finally pulling into a driveway a few feet from me. I frowned and moved to her car, my mind still struggling to process. I guess I missed that part. I got into her car and rubbed my hands over my face. My head was throbbing so badly, and my mind was so busy with worry about what had happened with Elly. "How are you feeling? You look tired," Jen asked as she pulled out of the driveway she'd been idling in. I pulled my seatbelt across my body and fumbled with it for a minute before it clicked in place. "I'm hungover. My head hurts. The normal feeling after drinking 3 shots of heavy liquor, I'd imagine." I closed my eyes tightly against the sun. Today it was my enemy. "I have some stuff in my purse if you want it," she offered. God, she was speaking so loud. I shook my head, putting my head backwards, resting it on the too firm headrest. "It'll be fine. How did I get home last night?" "The limo took us home, after prom." "Don't you remember?" Jen asked, amusement in her voice. "No, I don't," I said. I didn't find the situation funny in the least, and I was a little annoyed that she did. She shrugged her shoulders. "Oh, well, you must have blacked out at some point. You need to build up your alcohol tolerance. 3 shots shouldn't black you out, Kenny. Do you even remember our special time?" My cheeks were burning as I lied. I thought it was a dream. I didn't remember a damn thing, and that scared the shit out of me. Anything could have happened. What if I did something horrible to Elly? "Definitely not a dream, but you were so good." Her hand reached over and grabbed onto my thigh. She squeezed the inside, and my mind suddenly went blank. It always did this when she touched me. I can't wait to do it again. I closed my eyes and tried to get my mind back, but I couldn't. I was lost as I enjoyed the feeling of her fingers possessing me. She stroked with the precision of someone very well practiced at the art. She was building me up, higher and higher, and I forgot all about the mission I'd been on to figure out exactly what had happened at prom. Her hand moved away as she pulled into the drive-thru and ordered 2 burger meals with vanilla milkshakes. I blinked as I tried to make sense of what had just happened, and after a sip of milkshake, my brain was working again. Jen parked and turned in her seat to face me. So, my parents spoke with your mom, and right after graduation, you're coming with us for the summer to our vacation home in Hawaii. Isn't that exciting? I blinked at Jen. I just sat there holding the milkshake, the sweet smell making my stomach churn uncomfortably. Wait, when did I agree to that? How did you get my mom to sign off on that? Her mother could be very convincing, which is why it shouldn't have surprised me that she'd been able to talk my mom into it. But it did. It was easy. My uncle is going to let you shadow him for the summer. You'll get a taste of business and see if that's what you want to do in college. And at night, Jen's hand moved onto my thigh and squeezed gently, teasing me. I jumped slightly, not wanting to slip away into oblivion again just yet. But, but, I set the milkshake down in the cup holder after a couple of failed attempts at finding it and moved her hand away from my leg. Business? I chewed on the inside of my cheek as I considered what she'd just dropped on me. Hawaii would be great. Nights with Jen would be fantastic. But business during the day with her uncle? Uncle Scott makes a lot of money. He's good at what he does. I just thought you'd want to see if you might want to do that too. Maybe. That's a long time to be away from my mom. I'm all she's got. She obviously isn't worried about it. I'm sure if you ask Ellie, we'll check in on her every day if that will make you feel better. How miserable would you be without me for the whole summer? And Hawaii? You have to experience it. It's such a great opportunity. Please, Kenny, please. Hawaii would be nice. I wasn't sure how long Jen was going to continue to want to hang around with me. Maybe these would be our last months together. Or maybe it would just be the start of a summer tradition. I needed to think about it some more. But as I stared into her hopeful face, I couldn't tell her that. Okay, I heard coming from my lips. Jen squealed loudly as I agreed and hugged me tightly. I wrapped my arms around her and returned it. Jen could get me to do almost anything. I was so screwed. Chapter 20. Ellie. I was dreading homeroom on Monday morning. I didn't want to see his smug face. I didn't want to see him stare at Jen with admiration and love. I didn't want to see them together because the only thing I'd see is her on top of him, naked. I quivered and felt the bile rise up in my throat at the thought. I'd already heard rumors buzzing around the hallways. Everyone was talking about Kent and Jen's performance. I tried to convince myself that I was lucky because that could have been me. But when I was really honest with myself, I knew that it never would have been me. I would never have done that so openly in public. And I'd been very surprised that Kent had. Of course, he'd been drunk, thanks to Jen. I had purposely walked into class 30 seconds before the late bell rang. I slipped into the empty desk square in the front of the classroom and opened my notebook. We were working on studying for our final exam, so the class was rather quiet, though there were little murmurs here and there. The teacher had pretty much checked out since he was teaching seniors, and graduation was coming up quickly. There was a soft giggle a couple of seats behind me, and I heard two of my classmates whisper amongst themselves. I can't believe she did it. I mean, I knew she had guts, but I had no idea she had enough balls to do that. Did you see it? The other girl replied, Yeah, Ben had it on his phone, and I saw it before I came in here. They both giggled as I stared at my notebook. I felt bad for Kent, but another part of me was embarrassed to even be associated with him. Kenny really moved up this year. I could feel their eyes move to the back of my head. Too bad he couldn't bring his friends with him. Huh. Could you imagine her sitting at the popular table? There wouldn't be room for the rest of us. They both chuckled at the joke. Hilarious. I was so ready to be done with high school. I didn't ever want to see these people ever again. And you know what? That included Kent. He was just as much an asshole as the rest of them for what he did to me. He ditched me at prom and then came over and tried to act like it hadn't even happened. I didn't need him. I didn't need any of them. I closed my notebook and approached the teacher's desk. He glanced up, his eyebrows raised. There was a slight hint of pity in his eyes. Damn it. Even he knew my life sucked ass right now. I'm not feeling very well. Can I go to the nurse? I asked quietly. He looked me over quickly and then nodded. He scrawled a note and handed it to me. I took it in hand and was soon out the door. I didn't stop at the nurse's office, but I did stop at my locker. I was a senior, damn it, with only 2 days before final exams. I wasn't going to spend those 2 days being miserable. I'd go home and study and cram, and when I came back, I wouldn't have to hear anyone's mouth, because if they said anything, they'd be disqualified for talking during the damn final exam. I zipped up my book bag and was 2 steps from the exit when I heard running feet behind me. I glanced behind me and saw Kent, his cheeks flushed with exertion. Seeing his face brought back prom night. I scoffed at the memory and kept walking. "Elly, wait!" he whisper-yelled through the empty halls. I ignored him. We weren't friends anymore. I should have taken the hint all those months ago. It probably would have hurt a lot less. I heard him behind me, quickly catching up, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I continued to walk, and at the edge of the parking lot, he finally caught my book bag and tugged. "Elly, what the hell?" He turned me around. His face was crumpled with anger. His eyes searched me, confused. "What the hell is right, Kent? Just leave me alone. We're done." I saw the panic in his eyes. At least I thought I did before looking away. It was probably just my imagination. "What? We're done?" "Done with what?" he scoffed, his hand flailing a little. I met his eyes and spat my words. "Oh, just stop it." How could he stand there and act like he had no idea what was going on? How pitiful and desperate did he think I was? "Why did you bring me to prom, Kent?" I, I'm your friend, that's why." "You felt sorry for me. How sweet." "Well, don't feel sorry for me ever again." "Look, I meant to talk to you this weekend. I got caught up in things." "In Jen, yeah, I know. The whole school knows how caught up you are in her. They saw you." "What are you talking about?" I rolled my eyes and looked away, shaking my head. He grabbed my arms and shook me. "Tell me!" "You two fucking! There! You happy now?" I ripped my arms from his grasp and took a step backwards. The anger was quickly turning to hurt, and I felt the hot sear of my tears burning my eyes. He dropped his hands and ran one through his hair. "Oh, shit. We... No, they probably just heard something else." "No! You two had sex in the next ballroom over. There are pictures to prove it. And I saw it. And I'm so sorry you had to bring your ex-best friend to prom. But I guess it didn't matter. You did what you were going to do anyway. Thanks for the extra humiliation. It wasn't enough that I was dateless already." "Elly, come on. I mean, it was a shitty thing for me to do, but we're just friends. You know that Jen is my girlfriend. And you know that guys and girls do things." I nodded my head, a few tears escaping as I did so. I couldn't believe he was actually trying to defend himself. "Yeah, I know." but I can't sit around and watch it anymore. It hurts too much. The confusion was back. Why does it hurt you? I shook my head. I wasn't about to confess to him now, not after everything he'd done to me. It doesn't matter. Go back to your girlfriend. She's waiting for you. Elly, he called after me as I turned away from him, but he didn't stop me. And that was a big tell. I needed to ingrain that into my brain. Kent wasn't going to come running after me. He wasn't mine, and I wasn't his. He didn't want me. Chapter 22. Elly. I was seeking solace in the computer. I needed a friend, and unfortunately for me, I only had one that lived in my town. Or did. It had been hard to go back to school and see him in the hallway and ignore him. He looked as if he'd wanted to talk, but I never gave him the chance, and he didn't try too hard. Jen was constantly by his side, a reminder of who was most important in his life. I was online waiting to see Jake pop online when Kent's name popped up instead. My fingers itched to IM him, but I refrained. I wasn't going to cave first. As I contemplated going invisible or blocking him, my computer pinged and a message popped up. Kent. Hey, Elly. Is it okay to talk to you on the computer? Elly. It's a free country. Kent. Freedom of speech? Elly. Yes, that's the freedom I'm referring to. Kent. I'm really sorry about prom. I'm really sorry that I hurt you. I don't mix with alcohol well. I don't remember anything after arriving at prom, and I regret that. I don't remember dancing with you. I'm sure you had some really sweet moves. I can't go away this summer knowing that you're mad at me. Will you forgive me? Please? I read his message again and again. I was torn. This was Kent. Underneath it all, this is who my best friend was. This sweet guy. He'd been a part of my life for so long that I wasn't sure what life was going to be like if I cut him out of it. But the part that really got to me was the going away part. Elly. Where are you going? Kent. Jen's parents are taking us to Hawaii. I'm going to shadow her uncle and learn some business. Elly. Hawaii. Wow. That's great. Kent. Yeah? Elly. Yeah. I mean, Hawaii. I would have said yes right away. Kent. But it's going to be all summer. I won't get to see you all summer. Elly. But you'll get to see Hawaii. That's even better, don't you think? I stared at the screen, waiting for his reply. My heart dropped when it finally came through. Kent. Yeah, you're right. Elly. Yeah, always. Kent. So do you forgive me? I don't want to have to come over and break into your house and get on my knees in front of you. Elly. Yeah, I forgive you. Good luck on your finals. Kent. Yours too. Are you going to bed? Elly. Yeah. Need to get some sleep so I'll be awake enough to pass my tests. Kent. Yeah, good idea. Good night, Elly. Elly. Night. I wiped away my tears as I shut the computer down. I kept my distance from Kent and Jen for the last 2 days of school. I nodded to Kent when I saw him in passing, but that was all. My mom took me out for a celebratory movie and dinner, and that was that. I was going to be walking across the stage in a couple of days, completing my rite of passage into adulthood. Even though I'd spent most of the day with my mom, I was lonely and turned on the computer. Jake was online, and I was thrilled as I typed a message to him. Elly. Jake, I'm so happy to see you. So, I'm sure you'll be shocked. Prom was a big disaster. Jake. I told you so. Elly. You don't need to rub it in. All of my ideas aren't terrible. Kent still thinks you and I are a thing. Jake. But now things are a little awkward, aren't they? Elly. That wasn't ever going to happen. Me and Ken are never going to happen. I'm not stupid. Jake. If you give up now, then there'll never be a chance. Elly. Give up? I'm not even in the race. I was barred from the race to start with. Jake. So you're telling me that you're just going to let her win? Elly. He isn't a prize, Jake. He's a person. Jake. A smart person. Elly. Yes. BTW. If I get into Texas State, can I room with you? Jake. No. Elly. Whines, Jake. Come on. Jake. You want to be a third wheel with me and Candace? Elly. Gasp. She's moving in with you? Jake. Smiley face. Yep. Elly. All right, so Texas State is out too. Jake. No, you can come down here, but you can't room with me. I'd love to meet you in person, and Candace would too. And Texas boys have southern accents, and they open doors for their ladies. And everything is bigger in Texas. Smiley face. Elly. Jake, totally inappropriate. Jake. Elly, you perv. I was talking about everything but that. Elly. Sure you were. Smiley face. Jake. I gotta go. Candace and I are going out for dinner. Write him a letter or sing him a song or something. Elly. Lame. I'll just wallow in my self-pity. Jake. Super lame. Hugs. TTYL. I checked my email and raised my eyebrows in surprise to see one from Kent. The way we'd left things, I figured I wouldn't be hearing from him again until he was in Hawaii, at the earliest. To Elly. basepalmer@ymail.com. From Kent. Zelda Legend 2572@ymail.com. Date. Saturday, May 15th, 2000, 04, semicolon, 04 a.m. Subject. None. Else. I was going to call you, but it's 3 in the morning, and I didn't think your mom would appreciate that very much. I can't believe graduation is in 5 days and that I'm going to Hawaii in 7 days to look into business. Business. I'm super excited and utterly terrified all at the same time. I'm having second thoughts about it. It could very well be our last summer together. And I wasn't planning on that. If I knew that would be the case, I would have made last summer a whole lot better. Less video gaming. Maybe more video gaming. My mom said she was going to get together with your mother tomorrow, today, whatever, Saturday night, and have a ladies' night. She actually put the idea in my head about us doing the same, even if it's just hanging out for a few hours. No Jen, just you and me like old times. I'll even paint your toenails and let you paint mine. We'll have a girls' night in. Wink. So I guess that's all I have to say. It's taken me 45 minutes to figure out how to put my thoughts into words and somehow not feel like a creeper. I just know that I'm going to miss you a lot, especially if you get into Texas State. Anyway, an hour now with lots of deleted things, and now I'm just yapping in a damn email. Put me out of my misery. Email me back and agree to come over tonight. I sat there just imagining him falling asleep at the computer, waiting for my reply. Shit. My mom left an hour ago for her lady date. I quickly pushed back from the chair and ran upstairs. There was desperation in my gut. It felt like my last chance to say goodbye. It was my last chance to see him all alone, and I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want the goodbye tainted by Jen or our parents. I just wanted to see him. Just me and him. I picked up my pink cordless phone and quickly dialed his house. The phone rang like 50 times before he finally picked up. Hello, Lytell residence. Kent, I just got your email. Are you... I put my hand over the phone to take a minute to catch my breath and calm myself down so I didn't sound like a lunatic. I cleared my throat and spoke calmly. You should come over here. I have a lot more nail polish colors to choose from. Kent laughed on the line before he replied. All right, Els. Give me a few minutes and I'll head that way. Anything you want me to bring? An extra ticket to Hawaii? Silence greeted me on the other end of the phone. You're not making these second thoughts easier, Els, he said, before he cleared his throat. I'll be over in a bit. Before I could say anything else, he hung up the phone. I pulled it away from my ear and sighed. I'd been kidding, obviously. I didn't want to go to Hawaii. With Jen. Chapter 21. Kent. The fight with Elly was all that I could think about for the rest of the day. There was an ache in my chest every time I thought about Elly seeing me doing that. On the drive home from school, I realized it was time to confront Jen. If anyone could have stopped what had happened, it would have been her. So I saw this crazy picture today. Oh yeah? Which one? She asked, her eyebrows raised in curiosity. The one where you and me were doing it at prom. She turned to me, her smile fading ever so slightly. What? Oh yeah. You can see your face pretty good. Mine, not so much. She seemed to be processing what I'd said. Her lips were in a tight line, and her arms were out straight as sticks. So how did that end up happening? And why didn't you tell me about it when we went to lunch? She looked over at me, her eyebrows raised in surprise. You don't remember? And I did tell you, right before we talked about Hawaii. It was my turn to look surprised. She seriously didn't know I was blackout drunk? No, I don't remember. I don't remember anything after we took the pictures. That was just as we walked in the door, she said. Yeah, I know. So fill me in on the rest of the evening, since I missed it. She shrugged her shoulders, her eyes on the road. She was avoiding me and avoiding telling me things. Something else must have happened. Jen, tell me, I insisted. There's nothing to tell. We got our picture taken. I went off to find a private place so we could get it on, and when I came back, you were dancing with Elly. Then she went to the bathroom, and so did you, and when you came out, I grabbed you and took you to the place I thought was private. And then we did it. And then we danced and hung out with our friends. And then it was over, and we left. You mean we hung out with your friends? Where was Elly? She said it all in a rush, so casually. Jen shrugged again nonchalantly. I don't know. I didn't see her after she was dancing with you. My jaw was starting to hurt. I was clenching it so tightly. And you didn't think about looking for her? She frowned at me. Kenny, she's not my friend. She's yours. I didn't invite her to prom. You did. I just felt sorry for her, and I knew that if I said she couldn't go with us, that you wouldn't go. So I let her tag along. She reached for my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. I resisted the urge to pull it back. She's really pissed at me, you know. Because you didn't dance with her the whole time? Is that what she thought was going to happen? Jen laughed. I pulled my hand from hers. Jen, she's my best friend. It's not funny. She told me that she doesn't want to talk to me again. She glanced at me, her smile dropping. She doesn't sound like much of a friend to me, Kenny. Just let her cool off during the summer and all will be forgotten. She's probably just PMSing. We pulled into her driveway and she turned off her car and reached over, pressing her soft lips to mine, attempting to coax me out of my sour mood. It was working. When I closed my eyes and let her lips brush over mine, I could forget anything. She was a piece of work, truly, but she was my piece of work. And I knew that over time I could mold her into someone better. Deep down, she wasn't a bad person. My hands went to her shoulders and pulled her more fully against me. I love you, Kenny, she murmured as she reached for my pants. I groaned, so excited already. Wait until we get to your room. She grinned at me and all else was forgotten. I'll try my best. Chapter 23, Kent. Maybe it was going to be a mistake to go over to Ally's. Maybe she was just going to give me shit about everything. When did I start dreading seeing her? Oh, right. It was some time between prom and when she told me point blank that she wanted me to go to Hawaii for our last summer together before college. I still couldn't believe that she didn't even hesitate. Her answer came through the IM in less than 30 seconds. I exhaled slowly as I knocked on the door, quickly pushing my glasses further up my nose and trying to smooth down my hair. Gah! What the hell was I doing? I shoved my hands into my pockets just as the door opened and Elly was standing there, smiling at me. I couldn't help but smile back. It had been too long since I'd seen her smiling at me. I was kidding, about Hawaii. I didn't mean to. I nodded and looked down. Yeah, it's fine. Can I come in, or are you going to leave me standing out here all night? She stepped back, making room for me to pass through the door. Thanks, I said, as I entered and looked around. It was the same as it had always been, and yet it felt different. Weird. Awkward. There was a heavy something in the air. It felt like it was going to crush my chest in. She looked as awkward as I felt, with her hands crossed over her chest, and she was swaying like a branch moving in a gusty wind. It wasn't like her to be so fidgety. It only made me feel more anxious. So, I'll go get everything and bring it down here. I frowned and shook my head. We always did everything in her room, with the exception of our Christmas Eve traditions. I didn't want that to change now. No, that's all right. I motioned towards the stairs, and her eyes followed. After you. She shrugged, but her shoulders were tense, and only went halfway back down to normal. All right. She started up the stairs, the silence thick between us. It was beginning to feel like I was walking to my death. Halfway up, she pulled on the bottom of her shirt, once in the front and once in the back. So, have you started packing yet, or are you going to leave that to your mom? I packed the stuff my mom bought for me today, including the new luggage. An early graduation present, she said. I thought I would feel like an adult, but it felt more like I was being kicked to the curb. She laughed a little as she got to the top of the stairs. The sound was slightly strangled, and then turned left towards her room. When we were in her room, I sat on her bed and she fumbled with things on her desk. Avoiding my gaze, her back to me. "I'm so excited for you," she said. I frowned and listened carefully after I thought I heard a sniffle. Her back was stiff, and she was still shuffling stuff around on her desk. After a few seconds of listening intently, I definitely heard another sniffle. "Ellie? Are you crying?" She shook her head as her hand went to her face. With her back to me, I couldn't tell if she was actually crying or not. "Turn around and look at me, then." She shook her head again, her hands stilling on the desk on top of a bunch of papers. I got up and went over to her quickly. I put my hand on her shoulder for comfort, just in case it turned out that she needed it. My arms ached to hug her, but I didn't think it was appropriate for me to do. Jen wouldn't approve, and Jake probably wouldn't either. "Hey, whatever is going on, you can tell me. We're friends, you know, now and forever." I felt her shoulder move rapidly under my hand. She was silently sobbing. I bit my lower lip as I debated over what to do. Did I hold her anyway? Did she want me to leave her alone? Should I rub her back or something? I moved my hand to her back, and once it was there, she turned and put her face against my chest. My heart was beating like crazy, and I felt like I needed to run away, but I stayed and gently wrapped my arms around her, mirroring what she did to me. "Shh, it's going to be all right. Unless you're dying." "Are you dying?" She chuckled through her tears and shook her head against my shirt, keeping her face hidden from me. "Good. Then it's going to be all right." As I held her, I felt something unfamiliar stirring inside me. With her body against mine, I couldn't help but notice the warmth emanating from her skin, or how soft she felt in my arms, or how I itched to bury my nose into her hair. I felt myself relaxing, and as my mind relaxed, I had thoughts of her looking up at me innocently with tear-stained eyes. I had thoughts of her bringing her lips to meet mine. I swallowed hard as she pulled away enough to look up at me. "I'm sorry," she murmured so softly that my insides clenched with sadness. I shook my head to her. "Don't be." I put distance between us before she noticed that I had something unwelcome in my pants. "What's wrong?" I watched her eyes flick over me, and I hoped like hell she didn't catch a glimpse of my semi. "Jake and I broke up." "Oh, shit. I'm sorry, Ellie. Are you all right?" She hugged herself and sat at her desk, nodding. "Yeah, I'm fine. Because we weren't ever really going out. I only told Jen that we were to try to get her on my good side so she'd stop trying to drive a wedge between me and you." I frowned as she continued speaking, her eyes on her hands which were fiddling in her lap. "I'm crying because I miss what we had. And I'm sad because I feel like we won't ever have it again. This is us now. Two people living separate lives. And we can't be the way we were because I'm a girl and you're a guy. And despite how we know we feel about each other, the people in our lives aren't going to understand that." I rubbed at the back of my neck with my palm nervously. I had the sinking feeling that she was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. "I was glad when you wanted to get together. Because I wanted to see you one last time before you jet set across America with your rich, beautiful girlfriend, and then go to college with her at NU. You could still get into NU, I insisted. She shouldn't be giving up on everything. I hated seeing her this way, so down on herself. Had I done this to her? It's possible, sure. But we both know that if I haven't gotten a letter by now, it's extremely unlikely that I'll get one that says yes. Well, let's say you don't get in and you stay here. I'll be home for vacations and holidays. I'll still see you. She nodded, but I knew she didn't believe me. Elly, our friendship will only die if we let it. She nodded again, and I felt defeated and angry. She wasn't listening, and she was content with giving up. And that wasn't like her, not when it came to me or other things that were important to her, like going to college. She was holding back, and if there was a time to say something, this was it. Say it. Tell me, I demanded. We go to the same school now. We live in the same town 2 streets down from each other, and we haven't done a very good job at seeing one another. You have been busy. She was right. Of course she was right. I was in a relationship, and I was pushing everything out of my life for Jen, and I'd needed balance. But I'd found it. I was here, wasn't I? But what I saw in her body language was too much for me. She was already closed down. She'd already given up on herself. On us. So, what? Is this goodbye? My voice sounded angrier than I'd meant it to. And saying those words stung more than I thought they would. But her answer stung more. Yes. That's what you came here for, wasn't it? One last hurrah before you left? I'm not in the mood to pretend like it's the good old days. It's now. It's these days. These sucky days when we're just two people who used to be friends. More tears fell from her cheeks, but I barely saw them past the blur in my own eyes. There's no harm in making more memories, I said. I sounded desperate because I was. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to her. I don't need any more. I don't need to remember feeling this way. I looked away, afraid she'd see what I didn't want to admit to myself. My throat was so constricted I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get words out, but somehow I managed. I had to get out of there before I said or did something completely stupid. All right. Can I have one last hug at least? She was silent for so long as I stood there waiting for her answer. Shit. I knew her answer. As I stepped past her, she stood up and surprised me with a hug. It was tight. She fit in my arms so perfectly, but before I could fully memorize it, she pulled away. Bye, Kent. I'll be cheering for you when you cross the stage. I'll see you out. I blinked back my tears. If ever there was a time to man up and be strong, it was now. Why couldn't I keep it together? I shook my head. It's okay. I know the way. See you, Elly. I refused to say goodbye. It wasn't goodbye, damn it. I wouldn't let it be. Chapter 24. Elly. As I watched him walk away, I felt so small. I didn't know what I could have done to keep him. I didn't know how I could have outshined Jen, who was so unbelievably sparkly and perfect. When I heard the front door close, I crumpled to my bed. The millions of unshed tears soaked my comforter. wetting the fingertips that were curling hard against the fabric. My heart was breaking in two. My life would never be the same without him. My friend was leaving me. My friend was gone. I wasn't even sure I could call him my friend anymore. The thought crushed me further. I got off the bed and turned my music on. I didn't want to hear myself cry. I wanted to hear someone else, anyone else. I turned the volume up until I couldn't hear my sobs, and then I cried through the entire Metallica album. Memories of Kent replaying through my head over and over again. Memories were all I had now. By the time my mom finally came home, my tears were all dried up. The album long since stopped. She didn't say anything as she walked in and put something on my desk. I closed my eyes when the sliver of light from the hallway disappeared, leaving me in the darkness once again. It took a while, but eventually I was too exhausted to stay awake any longer, and was blanketed with darkness. When I woke up in the morning, I hugged my pillow to my chest as the evening rolled back into my consciousness. I laid there for a few minutes before getting up and shuffling to the bathroom. When I came back in, I grabbed a ponytail holder from my desk and turned quickly. My chair was untucked, and a spear of pain ripped through my foot as I stubbed my toe on the sharp wood corner. My hand went flailing and landed on a thick envelope. The force pushed it onto the floor, and after I was done jumping around trying to overcome the shock of the pain, I stared at it. It was addressed to me. It was from NU. It looked big. I felt my breath leave me as I reached down to pick it up. My hands were shaking as I turned it over and slowly opened it. This was it. My future was literally in my hands. I pulled out the papers and held a hand to my mouth as I read. Oh my God. I'd gotten into NU. I was going to be going to college with Kent. I hugged the papers to my chest tightly. My cheeks hurt from the size of the smile I was sporting. I set my papers on my desk and then went back to bed. Maybe Jen and Kent wouldn't last forever. And maybe when he was done with her, there would be room in his heart for me. Maybe.
Thank you for listening to High School Friends by Marie Cole. If you'd like to continue the story of Elly and Kent, you can hit the subscribe button below, like this video, and right now you can check the description for the link to the book. But with enough likes and subscribes, I'll read Justfriends and More Than Friends and the rest of the books in the series for free. Let me know what you thought about this book in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you.